Shelly, I've heard you talk about releasing when you talk about your work. What do you mean by that?
When it comes to emotions, we normally do one of two things. We either suppress them or we express them. And clearly it's healthier to get feelings out of our bodies and express them than it is to suppress them and all the different ways that we suppress them. But there is a little known third way when it comes to working with emotions, and that's called releasing them. And I first heard this term when I started using the Sedona method and the release technique, because those are ways to help people actually release negative emotions, not just deal with them or manage them. And so in that circle where people are using those techniques, they often use the word releasing. But I don't use it very much when I talk about emotions with people, because I think for the most part people think they're releasing their emotions or they're letting go of their emotions, and they're really not. A lot of times when people talk about, they say, oh, I've let that go, or oh, I just put that in the past, I don't think about it anymore. What they're talking about is, well, you can see that when I used my hand, I used it up around my head. So what they're talking about is having made a mental decision, having used their conscious thinking brain to make a decision to say, I'm not going to think about that anymore, I've decided I'm not going to feel that anymore, or try to put some distance between themselves and whatever it is they're wanting to let go of, whether it's a feeling or a situation that they've been worried about or whatever. But real releasing, in the way that I'm talking about it, is actually making contact with the emotion or the feeling and the energy where it's stored in the body, and allowing that emotion where it's stored to come up. And as an emotion or a chemical bubbles up and comes up through the body, there is a way to make a space for it to come up and be integrated in the different parts of the brain, so that the brain can go without having to think about it too much. The brain can it can be integrated. And probably the best way to explain it is to demonstrate it. As I said, when most people are talking about releasing or letting go, they're doing something like that. But real releasing looks more like this. I'll just kind of try to demonstrate it. It's using the thinking brain and quieting it long enough to put our awareness in the body. And then once we connect with a feeling, it looks something like this. Almost looks like prayer, because we're often holding a feeling. I know, can you see it? We're often holding a feeling. So it looks something like this. Here's a feeling, we feel it in the heart or in our gut or whatever, we hold it. And what releasing allows us to do is to make a space for it to dissolve. Sometimes when we connect with the feeling, what we do is simply make a space, like we're inviting a guest into our home and making a space for all the different personalities, for example, that might come to our party. We're making a space for all of them to be there and just let them be who they are. And what will happen is, in making that space, in the Sedona method, we call it welcoming. So there's a way we can welcome all the parts of us and all the feelings that we have to come and be. And in that welcoming, they will lose their charge, because we're not pushing against them anymore. There are several other ways that we can release. Another way to release is something that feels more like, say we connect with the sadness in our chest. There's a way to dive into it. And if that feels too threatening, we can dive in and jump back out. And dive in and jump back out. And dive in and spend maybe another second and look around and see what the landscape looks like, and then jump back out. Another way of releasing is, if I feel a tension in the back of my neck, I can almost exaggerate that tension and exaggerate it and breathe and feel my feet, and will often notice a feeling that comes with it. Often when I feel a tension in the back of my neck, there's a feeling of frustration or irritation that I've been trying to keep out of awareness because it doesn't seem nice. But if I can just allow that to be there and let my body kind of get into the feeling of it, it will dissolve and discharge and lose its power. So those are just a few of the ways that we release a feeling. So it's not, releasing is not about getting rid of it. That's not really releasing it. That's more like trying to control it. I'm talking about releasing. Releasing happens naturally when you take the fight out of it. When you take the judgment out of it. When you take the not wanting it to be there or wanting to be different out of it, it will dissolve on its own as it's given a space. And one other thing we can do, the Sedona method calls this holistic releasing. If you can notice a feeling like fear, for example, and notice where you feel it in your body, and if you can allow yourself to recognize the fear, the shape of it, the tone of it, the texture of it, maybe even the image that comes with it, and allow yourself to be receptive to the idea of its opposite. And let's just pick a word like calm, which might be the opposite of fear. If you can allow yourself to notice where the fear is, and oftentimes I'll ask people, they'll say, I'm afraid, and I'll say, well, where do you feel that? And they'll say, all over. And I'll say, well, check your big toe and see if you can feel some fear in your big toe. And they'll go, well, no. And I'll say, well, how does your big toe feel? And it says, well, it feels okay. So if you go back and forth between the feeling of fear and where it's in your body, often it's in the chest or in the belly, and your toe, and the feeling and sensations that we call fear in your belly or in your chest, and just be with that for a few seconds, and then feel your toe, and be with that for a few seconds. And go back and forth for a little while. The feeling of fear will neutralize. And so in that way, it looks more like this. There's a feeling, and then there's its opposite, and the feeling, and its opposite. So the letting go inside looks more like this. And that's what allows energy to dissipate, because energy wants to move. It's the nature of energy that it wants to move. And all of these things that I'm calling releasing, what they have in common is it gets the resistance out of the way. It gets the judgment about it out of the way. It gets the resistance in the inner fight, in the inner judgment, and the stories about the feeling, and the fear of the feeling that, oh, what if it comes up, what's going to happen? And our habit of resistance to feelings that we learned, a long time ago, younger than 6 years old. So we're just getting that stuff out of the way so that energy can do what energy is meant to do, which is move.